Dear chess friends, welcome to your of Chess channel and welcome to the last game that we'll cover today from the semifinals of the Speed Chess Championship in 2024 that was covered, I think, in a great way by chess.com. Before we mention anything, before we start to analyze anything, I would first of all really praise the production of chess.com. They covered now both semifinals between Hikaru and Alireza and also between Magnus and Hans for more than 10 hours. I think the coverage was really great analysis in a live coverage by all of the commentators. I would say also great studio. They have also great intermediate interviews while the matches were off. I think really spectacular job by chess.com, so I would really give a thumbs up. I really enjoyed today the whole coverage. I watched many games and had really a beautiful afternoon for sure. So we're diving now into the epic semifinals between Magnus Carlsen and Hans-Moke Niemann. Many again dramatic things happened, I would say, but not because of Magnus Carlsen. Actually, I think today Hans Niemann pulled off some drama, which was, I think, unnecessary. He claimed that something is not working with his mouse, that he has some issues, that his internet is lagging, and I'm not sure why he did need such a thing. He was obviously losing through the whole event against Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen, we have to now really mention it, won the semifinals against Hans Niemann with a clear result with 17.5 points against Hans Niemann's 12.5 points. Magnus, of course, fully deserved in the finals where he'll meet Alireza Firouzja. But Hans, I think, had also a great tournament so far. He doesn't have to be unhappy for sure. He played really great chess in this event, but I think didn't need this whole drama again against Magnus Carlsen. Magnus kept it calm, played simply his game and won many games, and is now the deserved finalist again of the Speed Chess Championship in 2024. And I've sorted out the game that I think broke really Hans Niemann, where he lost the game. And I think the issue for Hans was today that he couldn't really find his game. And when we watch now the result, actually in this match against Magnus Carlsen, Hans lost with a difference of 5 points, and also Hikaru Nakamura today lost with 5 points difference against Alireza Firouzja. So it's not such a bad result for Hans Niemann against the GOAT, against Magnus Carlsen. So he shouldn't be really unsatisfied, and he shouldn't really claim that anything is going on behind the scenes. Hans played great chess. Magnus simply played better chess, as I said. Nothing dramatic really happened between the two of them. So let's see now. Really, as I said, in my opinion, this game broke really Hans Niemann, where he had some chances maybe to get back into the game, but after this game, the result was 6 points for Magnus Carlsen and only 2 points for Hans Niemann. And then I think the tournament slipped away here for Hans Niemann. Magnus Carlsen kept it calm, as I said, and simply won the match. So let's see now this game with the white pieces here in 5+1 game. Hans Niemann opened with the move e4. We have e5 by Magnus Carlsen, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5. We have the Giuoco piano on the board. d3, knight to f6, c3, d6, and now kingside castling, h6, preventing, of course, some lines with bishop to g5. Rook to e1 by Hans. We have a6 by Magnus, simply getting the space for the bishop. We have now knight to d2, kingside castling, knight to f1, and after bishop to a7, h3. So pretty standard position, pretty symmetrical position. Again, nothing spectacular is going on. There are lines, knight to a5 here, rook to e8, bishop to e6, knight to e7 are standard lines. Here, Magnus plays already this standard idea with rook to e8. He wants, of course, to play bishop to e6 without messing up his pawn structure after potential f takes e6, and then he wants to recapture this bishop with the rook. So here Hans continues with bishop to d2, a theoretical novelty. He is relying simply that he could maybe have some tactics with the bishop here around the square h6. Forces now reaction here by black, bishop to e6, bishop to e6, rook to e6. But now Hans plays an interesting line with the move c4. Really a new strategic concept of the Italian opening. That's also what I liked about Hans Niemann's game today. He introduced to us novelties, he played sharp chess, but playing against Magnus is probably one of the worst things that can happen to you. Magnus is simply too strong here. So after c4, Magnus goes immediately for a d4 square. Magnus is saying, you left now a weak square in your position, now I'll try to occupy it. Knight to g3, we have now b5. Now this pawn structure is Magnus is trying to break here. Here Hans continues with bishop to c3, b takes c4, d takes c4, and now a huge decision, I would say, here by Magnus Carlsen in the next couple of moves. First of all, knight to f3, queen to f3, and now comes what is, in my opinion, the most important move in Magnus Carlsen's defensive concept here. He plays now the move bishop to d4. In the previous game, they actually played a similar game where Magnus tried some ideas with knight to d7, and actually he tried to keep his Dashko bishop on the board. But when we watch now the structure, here the pawn structure by black, by Magnus Carlsen, he has too many pawns on dark square. So I think going for this trades of pieces is a perfect solution of his sort of dark square problems, because if this game maybe reaches the full in-game stage, if you could just imagine the position without the rooks, without the knights, without the queens on the board, then Magnus Carlsen could have a tough time battling against this bishop, because this bishop would obviously attack this dark square pawns, and then this bishop would be always stuck maybe to the defense. So you should really clear the pawns out of this squares that your bishop is covering. In this particular case, of course, the dark square. So that's why Magnus is saying, I don't want to have such a bishop. Would try to trade it off. Hans continues with knight to f5. We have c5, and you see now, okay, now there are many pawns on dark squares, but now the dark square bishop is outside of the pawn chain. So even if you trade it off, then of course Magnus will recapture and will have a passer on the d file. So great strategic play here by Magnus Carlsen in really a fast time format. Bishop to d2. Hans is preparing now a beautiful attack. He's trying to play queen to g3, and then knight to h6, bishop to h6. The queen would be lined up on the g file, and here Magnus, that's why, plays the calm king to h7, tries to keep everything glued together and everything compact. Rook from a to b1. We have now the move a5, and now b3. Queen to d7, a3, knight to g8, and now queen to d3, which was maybe in the beginning unnecessary for Hans. Maybe immediately he could break the position with the move b4, a takes b4, a takes b4, interesting stuff, I think. But then maybe rook to a2, maybe he was unsatisfied with the outcome of this tactical sequence because of the potential rook move by Magnus. But okay, he continued with queen to d3, Magnus continued with knight to e7, and now finally knight takes d4, e takes d4, and now f4. Here Hans has created himself at least some kind of a mobile pawn structure. He has opportunities to break with the move e5, maybe if necessary with the move f5, so at least the pawns are marching. And many of us, I think, would be very scared to play against this attack by white. But again, Magnus keeps it calm. First of all, improves the position of the knight, b4 by Hans, breaking now the position here on the queen side. Okay, Hans lost the pawn, but created many structural weaknesses in Magnus Carlsen's position. But here he took simply bishop to b4, a king to g8. Magnus is not rushing here. He's not trading off more pieces. We have bishop to d2, and now rook from a to e8, putting out more pressure against this pawn on e4. We have now f5 by Hans, rook to e5, bishop to f4, and now Magnus goes with rook to c5. The rook is all over the board, but keeps at least this position around the square e5 compact. Now there is a great control of the square by many pieces by Magnus Carlsen. Rook to b5, we have knight to e5, queen to g3 with the threat of bishop to h6. But now Magnus plays a beautiful move which leads actually into equality. Both players so far played, I think, an outstanding game in a 5+1 game. Almost impossible to play chess like this. Here f6 by Magnus Carlsen. Of course, he wants to connect now the queen to the weak square on g7. Hans takes out now the pawn on h6. Magnus has also the opportunity to pick up now this one, but now comes the critical moment of the game. Now Hans makes the first mistake, and I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, this game simply broke him, because here he played a bad rook to b3, and really an unnecessary move. Of course your bishop is hanging, of course your rook is hanging, but this is simply too passive for Magnus Carlsen. You have to be more active. Of course, I'm just watching here computer analysis, and I'm telling Hans Niemann what to do. But as I said, if you want to beat, I think, Magnus Carlsen, you have to find the optimal moves. And the only way to stay in the game is to play here the move Queen to B3. If you try something like G takes H6, then Rook to B7, very dangerous stuff. You have to maybe step back here with the queen or give up the queen for the rook, but now the queen is coming on G3. That would be the optimal choice here for Hans Niemann. So if you don't want to lose the game, here Black has to play King to H7, and now you play something like this, Rook to E5. We have d takes E5. Now you pick up the rook because the knight is not protecting it anymore. And now after King to H6, I would say again an equal position. The material is equal, maybe slightly easier to play maybe for Black because of this passer on the d file, but nothing dramatic. I think also Black's king is exposed. You can deliver a couple of checks, so I think this would be a drawish position. But after Rook to B3 that Hans played, Magnus plays again the optimal move, Rook to C3. Great stuff. He simply creates new passer. The problem here for Hans is that, of course, the queen is overloaded again. You can take it, but now, of course, the bishop is hanging. So that's why Hans has to now do something. Rook to C1. Magnus protects it now, and now Hans had to retreat with the bishop, and suddenly the position is not so clear, I would say, because look at this. This passer is very, very dangerous to handle, because after Queen to A4 that Magnus Carlsen played, you cannot play Rook takes C3. Magnus found a really beautiful tactical way how to protect this pawn, and now you get, of course, here something like Queen to A1, and you can just cover, but then you lose decided material, and it's game over here for Black. So that's why bishop to E5. We have d takes E5, and you see now in this sequence, Magnus Carlsen has a really, really dangerous pass pawn. You cannot take because of the same tactic. So that's why King to H2. Here we have Queen takes E4, and now suddenly the position is collapsing here for Hans Niemann. Rook takes C3, but after Rook to C3, Rook to C3, Queen to C3, and Queen to F5. I'm not saying the game is lost, but you know, when you get into an endgame against Magnus Carlsen with down a pawn, I'm not sure how many of us would squeeze a draw. All this, I think you have to play a perfect game here in order to make a draw, but this is a fast time format here. Hans continued to deliver some checks. Magnus Carlsen escaped. Hans is again delivering some checks. Magnus is covering, of course. Hans is trying to somehow get a draw, but now finally the protection of the king comes now with a beautiful tempo against the queen. Queen drops back, and now Magnus simply pushes the pawns further. Still, if White continues to play the game in a proper way, I think it's a drawish position. But here Hans played H4. Magnus now delivers some checks, and now Magnus goes again with the king. Hans is trying to compete here, and after King to E6, King to H3, Queen to D1. Now Hans made a huge mistake with the move Queen to B6. The problem about this move, Queen to B6, that you don't have is that you don't have perpetual checks. You cannot deliver now checks through the whole time. And the issue is, when you played now Queen to B6, there's simply no good protection against the potential Queen to H1 checkmate idea. You can maybe protect it by covering the king, but any trades of queens is bad here for White, because Black is up a pawn and will reach the fully endgame stage just with the pawns. So this is not working. So that's why here Magnus escapes, of course. Hans is trying to deliver some checks. Let's see what was a better option instead of Queen to B6. The best move here, and maybe you can hold the position, is just stay with your king, stay with your queen here on E3, and just move the king, because then Black cannot have access with the king, cannot get closer, and in any of these lines White is trying to trade off the queens, then you maybe deliver check, and then you're not vulnerable again to these checks on H1 that we saw would be very dangerous. But Queen to B6, here Magnus escapes again. Hans is trying to deliver some checks, but after King to H2 you have to do that. If you don't do that, then it's of course a checkmate. Hans played now King to H2. Magnus delivers a new check, and now here after Queen to G1, in this particular position, Hans Niemann resigned. So what's the issue? You have to now, as I said, bring now the queen into the defense. You're not going to be checkmated, but you have to trade off the queens, and now in this pawn endgame, black is obviously winning in one moment, will simply go for this pawn, and it's again game over. So great game by Magnus. He played here like a machine without inaccuracies, mistakes, or blunders in fast time format. Brutal chess that he played. Here Hans Niemann pull off even in novelty, but Magnus found really the best defensive ideas, found a way how to activate the bishop, played a beautiful knight versus bishop endgame in the end, managed to squeeze a pawn, all those tactical sequences, managed to somehow play actively with the king. So really great elements in Magnus Carlsen's game. So as I said, Magnus Carlsen is the deserved winner of the semifinals. Will play now against Alireza Firouzja, and Hikaru Nakamura is battling against Hans Niemann for the third place, which is also, I think, a very, very epic match. I would also say Hans can be really, again, I would say again, very satisfied with his performance. He played a great game against Magnus Carlsen. He lost with the same difference like Hikaru lost today against Alireza Firouzja. So Hans should be really, really not ashamed. He played dynamic chess. He tried it out, but he played simply the best chess player in the world. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed also my coverage today from the Speed Chess Championship of chess.com. I really enjoyed today's games, which were really great, great novelties, great tactics, great sequences, great middle game ideas, great end game. So we'll cover, of course, also the other matches for the third place and also the grand final between Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja. So okay, if you want to see some other games that we have covered from the semifinals today, check out my coverage, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.